what I think a good leader is somebody who first off leads by example.
That's really all it is. Like it's not necessarily that you're across the board better than anyone else. Like I don't even know how that perception came to be.
A real leader is the person who's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do this thing. You guys do these things. You know, if you need help, I'll help you do it. A leader is also an educator, right? Like a teacher. Well, doesn't strife drive evolution though? Like struggle?
Well, I mean, that's what it is. Like there's a struggle and somebody comes to fill the need to satiate that, to alleviate the struggle.
Oh boy. Oh God, it's over. Oh, overflow. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt. We'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and all that great stuff. Make us happy.
And I am Casey Rochford. We write our own music, but you already knew that, so you know to hang around to the end. You should also go check out our website, ksmvidcast.com. Find all kinds of videos and figure out where to go buy the music because we want you to know.
And you can buy swag and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, cool shit.
Yeah.
So what kind of cool shit are we going to talk about?
Well, probably, the coolest, the coolest of the cool. If you're one of those people, like the Fonz.
The big dog.
Yeah, you're going to be an alpha. Like an alpha male or an alpha female, I guess, whatever, wherever you stand there. This is something that's kind of on our list of things to talk about. And I thought it'd be an interesting one because I've gone back and forth arguing with people over this whole thing. And I think it'd be an interesting topic of conversation.
So like specifically, like, is there like always a need for an alpha? Does like somebody always come and like step up and fill the role of like leader or whatever, right?
Well, that and whether it even exists to begin with. I think those two things, should be something that should be addressed at some point, like that we talked about.
Okay, yeah, no, this is going to be a pretty good conversation, I think, because like there is an element of biology in that I can speak to. And, you see it in the animal kingdom all the time, right? There's the alpha, like the head gorilla or, the bird at the front of the V, like
the wolves, right?
Yeah.
Wolves have the same kind of thing,
Yeah. And even if they tend to be loners, like when it comes down to territory or whatever, there's always some kind of dominance play,
Well, I think, so. I would say that to some extent that exists in the human world, but I think people are a lot more complicated, and you don't necessarily have the same kind of dynamics going on. What makes somebody important in culture, in human cultures, is completely different than in the animal kingdom. Or I guess we're animals too, but the other animals, right? Like, and it varies from culture to
detail
too.
Yeah, there's more detail, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily that different on a fundamental level.
Maybe, but it does depend, because it seems from my understanding from watching Animal Planet for many years that like basically there's someone or there's an animal in a group of animals, right, that establishes dominance, and they're just the one, and everybody just kind of falls in line. And I don't think that exactly works the same with human cultures, or at least not across the board. Like me, I'm an anarchist. Like I am not one of these people who like defers to whoever is the self-proclaimed leader. In fact, I'm actually a lot more skeptical of such people. So, you know, like it.
Yeah. Well, it isn't always a declaration, right? Well, especially in the case of, you know, a political leader, it's, you know, an elected position and stuff. But when it comes to like even anarchists, right? Like you're doing your own thing, fine, yeah, like you're your own alpha or whatever.
Mhm.
As soon as you introduce another human into your dynamic, one of the two is going to be an alpha in any given like conflict scenario, like where there's two different ways of doing something. Not necessarily a conflict like you're arguing, but like a conflict of, you know,
whatever situation, solving a problem. Yeah. And
mm-hmm.
and that may be, but I don't think that it's like a set a threshold, right? Like it just depends on what you're doing. And you know, I guess in human cultures, a sort of alpha could be achieved by being just popular, right? Like maybe you're just such a good musician. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson, right? Like he's just an alpha of like pop music and dance,
Yeah.
like undisputed. And it's just because he was just that good.
I mean, that's how high school is, I think.
Well,
Right.
it is, but and you know, maybe one of the issues I think that people tend to conflate popularity with wisdom, right? Like, you know, you must, if you're the one that everybody talks about, like everything you must say must be uh you know, I guess gilded in gold or something. But wait a minute, it would be gilded. The that's a little bit redundant.
The sun.
Yeah. And I don't, you know, that's something that I see a lot where people kind of like assume that because somebody is like popular or in the news or whatever, that you know, everything they say must be the wisest possible thing. And you know, I think that's kind of bullshit. Um,
I bet a lot of people that are, you know, popular in high school probably have that imposter syndrome sort of thing.
mhm.
Um, I mean, I was never the popular guy, so I can't speak from experience or anything, but I would imagine that, yeah, people looking up to them for just about everything, there's got to be situations where they feel the pressure to make that call or whatever, and they don't really have the know-how to do it, right? And I mean,
Yeah, and in
high
fact,
school is probably not as dire of a situation most of the time.
no, but you know, like you had mentioned politics too, and I don't think, you know, people look at like who the president is or whatever, and it's like, okay, the president doesn't really make that many decisions. There's a whole pyramid of like, I guess, extras behind them, people that know things about different
Yeah.
things, consulting, giving information and stuff.
Yeah, I loathe to even consider democratically chosen positions as a true alpha anyway, like especially on that scale, right? A president of an entire country of hundreds of millions of people.
No, but people do perceive things in that way. They care about that person. They might look up to that person, or it matters in their daily life, right? If they like or dislike, they're following the news. Oh my God, what is President A doing? You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, so in a sense, they've kind of become that.
Yeah, yes and no. So like, I mean, there is that heralding of a popular person, you know, they achieve celebrity status, you know, like they could have been a no-name senator that nobody's ever heard of. Like for me, for the most part, as soon as somebody becomes president, I'm shocked to hear that they were in politics because I'd never heard of them before, you know.
Yeah, yeah, they kind of come out of the woodwork, and it's like,
I'm I'm just not political enough to like pay attention on that level, you know.
oh yeah,
But
because it's, I mean, it goes down like this Congress and state level stuff, and
yeah,
who knows, it could be anything.
anyway, I forgot where I was going with that, but
I think you were following up to my statement about the people perceive the president, right, as an alpha because of their. Oh, you were saying like elected people shouldn't.
Yeah. I
I
don't really want to consider them alphas because to me, an alpha is somebody that actually takes control and like has the respect of the people beneath them or whatever, right? Like,
and that's a good point.
And our presidents are, I mean, at this point anyway, so polarized that at least half the country is like, fuck what he says, like.
Well, and it's just like it's a clown show to begin with too. It's like they're not really leaders.
So I just kind of want to take that off the table because to me, like, even in the animal kingdom, there's no precedent for that level of an alpha, right? Like there's only so much reach an alpha has.
Yeah.
And that is way too vast.
So let's just say like in a circle of friends or something.
Yeah.
That's
circle of friends or, a school group project or, whatever, you got a small group of individuals that have to work together to some mutual end, right?
My point about that was like, it does depend on the circumstances and the type of people. An alpha in a group of chess players might be the best chess player, but you take that same super awesome chess player and put them in like an athletic group of friends and they're going to be a nobody, right? Mm-hmm. Like chess playing doesn't matter when you're, hanging out with a bunch of football players.
No, that's a good point. Like it is very, I don't know, like specified to whatever the situation is, right?
Yeah, it's circumstantial, basically.
Yeah.
And so that my thought is it isn't like a set thing. Like I don't think that you as a person could just be alpha, right? Like and it would come and go, it would change. And also you're under a lot more scrutiny in that kind of position. So if you make a mistake, your mistakes are probably a lot more impactful than they would be if you were just kind of a nobody down in the lower rungs. You're expected to make mistakes, but if you're like the big dog, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, but yeah, I don't know that it's something that is like necessarily a personality trait. I mean, maybe just being somebody who steps up and takes charge, maybe makes difficult decisions or something like that. If you're an really outgoing person, sometimes you become kind of, I guess, the alpha. Like if you're just always talking to people and you're very extroverted or something, you could become that.
That's really all it is. Like it's not necessarily that you're across the board better than anyone else. Like I don't even know how that perception came to be,
but that's kind of the perception that is I guess perpetuated. Like that's what people believe.
Well, yeah, but like how many, so everybody's had to do group projects in school, right? And it's always like a different crew of people that you're thrown in the mix with
and different projects. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so sometimes somebody will, say there's a group of 4 of you or whatever, somebody will be like, hey, I know exactly how to do this. And they'll like, kind of disseminate, tasks to the others and be like, I bet you would be really good at this, or, let me help you figure out how to do this, or, do you want to learn how to do this and stuff? And they just kind of naturally take control. And then there's other times where, and like speaking from personal experience, everyone's just kind of like, well, what do we do? And then I'm just like, fuck it. Okay, you do this. And I just step up and fill the role that needs to be done, because people going toward a common goal that don't have somebody to say, let's go this way, they'll just go nowhere.
Yeah.
Naturally. Like,
well, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step kind of thing, right? Like you need somebody who's just going to be like, well, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
that
kind
doesn't
of,
make me an alpha until the day I die. It makes me an alpha until that project's done.
yeah, or in the moment or something,
Yeah.
and that's my point is I don't think it's a necessarily a, apples to apples comparison between the other animal kingdom, that there's like people who are just alphas, right? Or that people need that. I think there's people who, and, alphas, leaders, whatever, I think they all kind of blend together in a sense, especially when you're talking about human cultures. There's all kinds of ideas about what makes somebody leaders, and what is a leader. And to me, I think, I, what I think a good leader is somebody who first off leads by example. um you know what was that? I heard recently something about Prince. If he had, if they were working on a project and had to work late or something, he would stay with the crew while they set things up. um he would like be there with them, helping out, doing things. And it's like, yeah, that if you just tell people, oh, go do this, and then you kind of walk away and let them do it, you're not a real leader. You're
Yeah.
you're a fake at that point. Like a real leader is the person who's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do this thing, you guys do these things. If you need help, I'll help you do it. A leader is also an educator, right? Like a teacher, somebody who knows how to do stuff. You should be intelligent, you should be wise, experienced, and share that experience, not just bossing people around. Somebody that bosses people around is not a leader. They're just a bully.
Yeah. Of all the restaurants I worked at, the most respect I had for the owners of respective restaurants were the ones that would fill the gaps. Oh, somebody called out sick. Oh, I'm going to go cook on the line tonight. Or, I'm going to wait tables or be the host or whatever, like,
Yeah.
they just actually get out there and work. They're not,
and they build respect.
sitting back. Yeah.
And they build respect.
And it's like,
and that's the thing about a good leader. A good leader motivates people, like to like, you get self-motivation. It's like you want to do something for that person. Like, I want to show them that I can do it. Oh, well, you don't want to be the person not doing anything or kind of half-assing stuff, because you see that the quote leader, I guess, the alpha or whatever, and they're working double time. They're doing twice what you're doing. So, second best isn't good enough at that point. Like, it motivates you to do even better. That's a good leader. And I don't think there's enough people like that in the world, honestly.
Well, that might be because I think we're reaching a technological and social apex where we're actually kind of grinding the gears of evolution. And I say that because, like, alphas kind of drive evolution. You're basically just filling whatever needs to be met, right? Survival of the fittest sort of thing.
Doesn't strife drive evolution, though? Like struggle?
Well, I mean, that's what it is. Like, there's a struggle and somebody comes to fill the need to satiate that, to alleviate the struggle.
Yeah.
And so, like, say you're a bunch of gorillas or whatever, and you just happen to have a bunch of brute strength, and that's what is called for at that moment, and you save the day, and everyone sees you as the alpha, until the day that speed is what you need. And then some other gorilla comes along and whisks everyone away quickly while you get pummeled with your brute strength because you weren't fast enough.
Or now all of a sudden it's a matter of intellect, right? Like, your enemy is too cunning. So the smart people are the ones who actually win the day at that point. I mean,
it's all need based. It's dynamic.
It's adversity that drives evolution, cultural and biological. I mean, I'm not a biologist, but that's kind of what I would think. Like, it's that kind of challenge, I guess, that makes things change for the better.
And those adversities, like evolution doesn't happen with an individual. It happens with a community.
Oh yeah, well over time it's spread out between lots of different individuals, and I mean, yeah, whether you're talking cultural or biological evolution, it's not one person. I mean, one person can definitely be kind of the, I guess, the spark, right? Like maybe one person does something wild and crazy and it catches on, right? It becomes a fad or a fashion trend. Something like that. That kind of thing does happen, but it doesn't become a trend because of that person. It becomes a trend because of their influence. Like it's many other people, all these other actors kind of participating, I guess, that make those changes happen. So it's like, you know, I had this idea one time when everybody was walking around the mall like sagging and stuff. I thought, you know, wouldn't it be great, like, and instead of sagging, I would just like wear a belt around my waist and tie the belt through my pants and just hang the pants on the front of my legs and walk around like I'll start a new trend. But you know, if nobody cares about that, if they're just like, whoa, weird, what a weird guy, then that's never going to catch on, you know. But if I were it, here's the thing, they would say that if they didn't know me. But if I were some famous musician, right, which I am, but you know, if I were some kind of like famous musician or whatever, huge media figure, then maybe people would take notice of that and they'd be like, oh hey, you know, I'm gonna try that too, because if it's good enough for him, maybe it's good enough for me. And I think that says a lot about how these kinds of things happen. It's not good ideas that catch on necessarily. You can have all the good ideas you want, but you know, if nobody cares about them, or if you can't get your voice out there, then it'll just die on the vine. But you know, if you're famous enough that people care, if you're some kind of like movie star or whatever, then it matters. Apparently, I don't know why, but it does.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic, because I don't know that it always happens that way, like, or at least not so easily. Because just look at fashion, for instance. You know, you've got all these like runway shows, and like you never see clothes that a normal person would wear. They're always wearing something like the Jetsons would fucking laugh at, right? Like it's weird shit. It's way out there.
Well, yeah, those kinds of things are kind of like concept cars. You go to a
car show, you'll see famous people walking the runway with it, like, and nobody's going out and like buying that shit.
Well, you know why? It's because it's kind of like designer clothing and it's too expensive for the average person to buy. But there's an influence that trickles through that ultimately changes things. Like, let's say it's something simple, like tears in your jeans, right? That was really cool in the 80s.
But if supply and demand works, if those goofy outfits had enough demand, it would drive the price down so people could afford it, right?
Well,
they're just goofy enough that they suck, you know.
And it kind of does to an extent. It just depends on what it is. Some things are a little impractical too, so it's like, it's more like, hey, that's really cool, but that there's no way I can wear like a dress made of newspapers knitted together. You know, that's not practical in Washington State, where it's like always raining. You know, so there are factors like that to consider. But I think those influences begin in that way, and people tend to kind of pay attention to that stuff. I mean, think about it. Like, if I walked through the mall wearing something weird, they'd be like, well, who is that weird, crazy homeless guy? You know. But if they could recognize me, if I were like, I don't know, some celebrity or something like that, then all of a sudden everybody'd be like, oh, I want that, even if it's stupid. It does kind of work that way.
I don't know that there would ever be a scenario where an alpha wouldn't emerge naturally, even in an anarchist society, if you could even call it that.
Oh, it's a society.
Like,
Yeah, no,
like,
it would
like,
definitely be a society, a culture. Sure.
like a seasteading sort of situation where everyone just kind of does their own thing or whatever. But then uh, a massive leak crops up, and the water's just flooding everywhere. Everyone's in danger. And there's like 12 dudes that are just like, not my problem, even though they're sinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat that?
Yeah, well, and there would be. I think there are people, uh, okay, so I guess I take exception to the term alpha because of its correlation to the animal kingdom, and this kind of like general assumption that like if you're just an alpha, you're just a big dog, like anything goes. It's like I don't think it works that way. I mean, I suppose it could, but it's transient. It's something that depends on whatever you're doing. Your position is always uh, potentially challengeable, and changeable. It's fleeting.
Yes, that is a good point. Like there is that perception in the animal kingdom and in humans that the person that is the alpha can do anything, right? Like, I mean, if you examine your own psychology, when you see someone totally nail a project, well, you think they're probably pretty good at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's only when their shortcomings are exposed that they become not an alpha in that particular situation.
However, it might take a while. It might take a few of those exposures because people are willing to dismiss mistakes when they have faith in someone, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we see this all the time, like in religion, where people are just so enamored with their faith that they're willing to forgive a whole pile of problems, just because they've put their stake in this, right? Like this is what I believe. This is, my people, my culture, whatever. You see this all the time. Well, we have another topic about America being a cult and stuff like that. People are willing to overlook these errors many times. Like the threshold is pretty high, I think, because of that faith, because of those strong feelings, because it's like, if I made my own I guess sense of self be dependent on this system, I'm a such and such, whatever I believe I am, right? A religious person, someone part of a group or something, that kind of thing, like your identity is part of that. You don't want there to be a flaw in that, because if there's a flaw in that system, there's a flaw in you. And so people are inclined to look past those kinds of things, like more times than they probably should.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most tumultuous part of any democracy, is the fact that once you've chosen somebody, you're stuck with them for X amount of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if all of a sudden they kind of prove themselves to be, wacko jacko, they can't really do what they promised, which is always, and yeah. and you've basically got nothing you can do about it, because there are way too many checks and balances that effectively their job is safe. Like they've got to really piss everybody off to lose their job. And like most jobs are not that safe, right? So
but in the government
yeah, so right there, right off the bat, everybody gets disillusioned with that, because the natural order of things is, hey, you can't cope with this particular dilemma, somebody's got to step up and take over for you. You got to tap out.
Yeah.
and we don't have that sort of a system.
Nor is that even encouraged for people within that system to be like, man, I'm in over my head. You know, somebody else has got to take over.
Like,
and
that's where the
there's
Klingons
nothing,
have it right.
Yeah, well, and there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase uttered far too infrequently in politics and society in general. I think there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a sign of strength.
But I mean, that's a perfect world. If the president was like, I don't know how to solve this, I'm going to defer to you or this team or whatever. It doesn't work that way. Like, and you can't build a system that depends on, you know, the honor system. Like, oh, hey, if you can't figure something out, just admit it, because that's more than likely never going to happen.
Well, but that's kind of like a scientific way of doing things too.
Well, yeah, it is. And like I said, perfect world, but we don't live in such, you know, and that's why the natural order of things tends to fall to that whole alpha idea of like whoever is best fit for the task steps up and kills or, you know, runs out the other one. And
I don't think it always works out that whoever's best fit for the task. I think oftentimes it's sort of like the people that appeal to the others well enough are the ones who get that role. Not necessarily the people with the best ideas, but people with the loudest voice or the most fame or whatever, you know, sex appeal or something, you know, you name it, whatever factors get people going. I mean, those are the ones.
Are we talking about politics, or are we talking about like primal stuff? Because primal is like proof in the pudding. Like if you don't prove it, you're not going to be the alpha.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, in the context of like a project, right, where you have to actually accomplish something, unlike what you do in politics. But if you have to actually accomplish something, there's a task to be done, and somebody does it, or, you know, a team does it. I think that's different. My thought is kind of I'm more leaning to like the political or societal things, because I think they're kind of all in the same bucket. People look to all kinds of people for answers, which I think is harmful. Like, you should find the answers yourself and not always, you know, there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there just waiting, take your money or your life or your time or whatever.
I mean, like I agree, like looking to the president to fix everything, or blaming the president for gas prices, or, you know, like the sky turning gray on a day that was supposed to be sunny, you know, like putting everything on one person is bullshit, you know, like.
But people do it's religiosity, basically. Like,
it is.
And I think,
but it's okay to defer to people that do know what they're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And I would never say that that's not the case. But in general, I think the general public doesn't do that. And they don't even know how to analyze whether someone is qualified or not. Like, it just basically comes down to, well, and this is why ad campaign signs or political campaign signs are a thing, because they know that if you've seen the name enough times, it'll be in your head and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I recognize that name, and they have a D next to them or an R or whatever, and I'm a D or an R and I know that name, so I'm gonna vote for that person. You know, like, that's such a huge problem. Like, just read a bit, people. You know, and there's nothing wrong with saying you don't know. There's nothing wrong with maybe not making a choice if you're not 100% certain about that choice. Sometimes the best course of action is inaction.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned political signs, because that made me think that song I wrote way back in like 2003, Revolution Spark, about how I said that, you know, people are swayed by signs and lawns, you know, like it that really breaks it down to how ridiculous it is that some people just follow the person who has the most signs and lawns,
Yeah.
like just based on that, you know.
Oh yeah, totally. And that kind of, is what I was saying about your identity. And that's a huge problem. Your identity should be just you, right? The totality of your experience and existence on this planet, your life, that kind of thing. That's your identity, not some club that you belong to or whatever flag you fly or shirt you wear or whatever, brand that you buy. Like those things are bullshit. They're just products. Like, but yet it's this whole religiosity thing. Like people feel the need to be like, to like have their identity formed for them by some external force that, it's like, oh, who should I be? Well, just be yourself. What's wrong with that? I don't understand that, but this is how a lot of people behave, and it's probably why there's a lot of problems. That why people argue so much about bullshit things that don't even matter. I mean, it's evident if you diss a band, right, that somebody likes, they get like very emotional. Like, oh, how dare you hate Blink 182? They're the greatest band ever. Like, well, okay, are you in that band? Like, if you're not in that band, I don't think it really matters to you personally. It shouldn't matter. It's a personal taste thing. But people do that like all the time. And that's just music. I mean, when it goes into politics, people get really crazy, like super crazy. It's like, wow, how are you letting other people manipulate your own identity, build that? Wow. I don't know.
Stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that pisses me off. Like, but then it also doesn't, like, because it's so much about just personal taste, or
but if someone has a different personal taste, then what does that matter to you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like yesterday, I think all my days are blending together.
Unemployment.
I had recorded like there's like this karaoke app, Smule or whatever. I'd recorded a Queensryche song it was like 5 steps lower than the usual one, and it was kind of throwing me off, even as musically inclined as I am. But I just ad-libbed a different melody, and it actually sounded super cool. And I shared it on like a Queensryche page on Facebook, just thinking like, like, let me know what you think. It's a totally different melody. And only one person commented, and they said, sorry, it's horrible. and I was just like, I wasn't even offended. I was just kind of like, maybe just work on your constructive criticism a little bit, because like if there's something like legitimately, like clawing at your ears, let me know so I can work on it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is if there's a problem, you should be able to identify that problem and explain it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, okay, if it's horrible, why is it horrible? What about it is horrible? But that's the thing, is like one person says, oh, you did a terrible job with that. And then all of a sudden, you get defensive and you start ad homineming back and forth. And then pretty soon the focus is lost. Right. And
so I didn't even engage that one, because it's just like, I'm not going to argue with people about their personal tastes. Like, to me, it was like done in one take. I didn't plan any of the melodies or anything. It just flowed, and I was pretty proud of it. So, like, fucking,
yeah, exactly. I mean,
like, I don't need to like challenge everyone that, like attacks my ego. And that's probably like what a true alpha really needs to keep in mind, right? Like people are going to challenge you, and you got to know which battles to waste your time on.
Sure.
Right?
And maybe not even worry about your ego. In fact, I think maybe that's something that makes somebody an alpha to begin with, is like not having a stake in the game at all.
Yeah.
Like you care less what people think. Like I don't care what people think of me. Like fuck it. I like
Yeah.
I don't need anybody's affirmation to prove anything. I got nothing to prove to anybody. I've been around the block a little bit.
I'll tell you what, that there was the most popular guy in my class in high school was actually a literally down to earth dude. This dude Travis, he was super cool, and he would talk to me like a total geek, like long hair and leather in the late 90s was, like you don't talk to people like that, but he would talk to me. And 20 plus years later, we still talk. And he was the big dog, right? And he was going to go on and get the football scholarship and everything. And in college, he broke his back.
Ooh.
And then Marcus Trufant ended up becoming the big dog and went on to the Seahawks and stuff. And Marcus and I actually used to like play basketball and stuff, but he won't even talk to me now. And Travis and I, though, like he's a fucking badass, man. Like he's walking now, like not well, right? But like for someone who broke his back, it's like exceptionally well, right? Yeah. Like and that's inspiring. And at the 20 year anniversary, I just decided to go, and he was like the only dude I talked to, and there were other like beta people or whatever that were like way cooler than me, wouldn't even like, probably didn't even remember me, right?
Yeah,
but
probably
he was like, hey, how you doing? And we like caught up and stuff. And I just, that to me is a true alpha, like someone that recognizes the position they have and they use it for good.
Well, and I think being able to deal with any situation with grace is another thing that makes you that. Being indifferent to the circumstances and just carrying on, that's kind of the most badass of badass things.
It's not doing it the best, it's doing it the best you can.
And maybe not really caring so much about your own self or what people think. I think that's a factor. I gotta say, as soon as I stopped caring what people think, I was a lot happier with life.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh fuck, that was a turning point. It took a long time, but as soon as I just like let go and like, fuck them if they can't take a joke. My life was so much better. And like that's something people comment on all the time is that I have like extreme confidence. And inside I don't necessarily have that confidence. I'm always like second guessing myself and thinking and calculating and all this stuff. But it's like maybe it's just something that comes with age. I don't care. It's like, all right, well, I'll do the best I can and try. Like trying is the half the battle, honestly. Just getting out there and doing it, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna make the best of it.
I mean, confidence is all about being able to like critically analyze yourself and acknowledge your weaknesses and acknowledge your strengths, and use that to the most efficient ends, right? If you can step right up and say, I am deficient in this area, somebody else really should step up and handle this. If people tend to look at you as an alpha, they're probably going to see you as more of an alpha then, because you basically just prevented a whole lot of wasted time on you being like, how do I fake it until I make it? Well, and that goes back to what I was saying about experience and things like that. Did I ever tell you about my Konica Minolta experience?
at work?
Maybe.
Oh,
I mean, we did have a printer repair business. So.
Well, and that factors in. It This was one of the most awesome moments, and oh, it was so good. So at my work, we had Rico as our printer copier supplier, and the contract was up, and powers that be, they were like, let's go with somebody different. So they brought in a bunch of people, and a bunch of teams of people showed up. And of course, me being the person in the company that co-ran a printer repair business for 6 years, they were like, well, I guess you're on the team. They had a bunch of people from different departments and stuff, and they were all over the map. And so all these people showed up, different groups from different companies and stuff. And it was funny because of how it amused me how hard these companies tried to get our business, like whining and dining kind of stuff, and schmoozing and trying to be all nice and everything. And I that stuff doesn't really matter to me. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And so it got whittled down to a couple companies, and Konica Minolta was one of them. And so Konica Minolta set up a meeting in Kirkland at their headquarters, their local headquarters. And so, I'm thinking, okay, well, there's going to be all of us going. And the day that this meeting was happening, I was the only one.
Oh,
like, wow. I was it. I'm the guy that's going to Kirkland to deal with Konica Minolta and sit down with them and have them sell me their service. And of course, I'm like wait.
Were you like, hey, dudes, why is it so hard to find parts for you guys? Like, I remember that.
I might have brought that up, but here's the thing: I was wearing what I was wearing now, like t-shirt, just black jeans, regular clothes, just kind of casual and stuff. I drive up to Kirkland. I go into their headquarters. It's all like this shiny glass-sided building, a huge, imposing kind of building. I just walked right in. I'm like, I'm here for a meeting. And they're like, oh, okay, well, go up to the 4th floor. And so I go up there and I walk in, and there's all these people wearing like fancy clothing, like suits and skirts and like all this nice, like really nice looking clothing. And they're like, oh, come on in. And they had this huge boardroom with this long ass table that was all polished up and stuff. And they had like all these sandwiches and food and all this stuff, so I sat at one end of the table, just like I am now, and all these executives, like high ranking people in the company were sitting along this table, and I'm just like asking them questions about things and stuff. And I was like, well, I want to actually like see these machines that you're going to be selling us, right? I want to look at these. And they're like, oh, well, we've got a couple demo units over there. I'm like, all right, cool. So I got up and walked over and just started taking the machine apart, like pulling things out and stuff. And they're like, oh, this guy really knows his shit. Uh-oh. And I'm like, hey, can I talk to the people in the shop too? I want some more information and stuff. Like I did not care at all about their brochures and fancy stuff. It's like, whatever. You guys, I want to talk to the guys in the shop and pull the machines apart and lick the toner and all that stuff. And
it's guys like you, Spanner, the salt of the earth.
Yeah, and I ultimately chose them. And I had to fight too, because the follow-up meeting with all the people that didn't go, they were like, oh, well, Kelly Imaging, they were like really nice. And I'm like, nice? That has nothing to do with how good their machines are. Like, look, all you have to do is look at the price. Have you looked at the cost per print? price, like Kelly Imaging is very expensive. Konica Minolta is actually kind of a good price. And in my experience, their machines are okay until they break. But hey, we don't have to fix them. They do. So why not? Like,
That's a good point. Yeah.
We ended up going with them, until the contract ran out. And then we went with Kelly Imaging.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they don't even have their own machines. It's like
No.
catch as catch can. Like they just pull stuff off the shelf and they're like, yeah, slap Kelly Imaging badge on it. Like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. But, the thing is, like, I was thinking about this after the fact. And myself in like high school or whatever, those years, I would have been terrified in that situation. But due to like how I've shifted my views on things, like I was actually kind of amused. I'm like, I'm gonna play with these people, like I have them in my hands. All of these people that make way more money than I do, I have control of them and I'm gonna revel in it. Oh, this is so good. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's strength to be had in knowing what your strengths are, and there's also strength that you can acquire from knowing what your weaknesses are too.
Oh yeah.
Because recently, I've always suspected this, but recently I took one of those tests and discovered I'm like, borderline autistic, like high end of Asperger's or whatever. And and that accounts for so much of like why I'm awkward in certain social situations, like small talk or whatever. But if you put me in front of a crowd or give me a topic like this show, I won't shut up, and like this show, like I use that as a strength, and like I know what situations to try to avoid or to try to like work to my advantage, or handicap myself in a certain situation. Like it's given me such like a new perspective on how to enter a situation, that I feel like more confident in all aspects. Like even those which like I typically, historically have trouble with, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna, come clean and be like, yeah, I got this little issue, but here's where I excel, and like highlight that, and like make that the focus and be like, yeah, I'm gonna stutter here once in a while and say dumb shit and like, mash up words. Like, do not do that. But like when you give me a topic and it's something I know a few things about, get out of the way because I'm gonna just like tear a hole.
Well, yeah, and I confidence is part of that too. Like knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, dealing with unfamiliar situations, like how if it's something you've never dealt with before, what do you do? Me, I'm the kind of person nowadays, well, definitely not in the past, but nowadays I'm the kind of person who would just like jump headlong into it. Like, well, I don't know, Geronimo, I'll just see what happens. I'll wing it, work my way through it.
That's the best kind of alpha, because if you know your weaknesses, you know how to build a good team.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And when it's something that you should pass on to somebody who's more of an expert. And plus you'd also learn how to recognize people who know stuff, which I've gotten better at too. Yeah, man.
And it takes your own ego down a notch to the point where like you don't have that idea that you always have to be right or that you always are right.
Yeah.
If you can come down from always are right, at least, that's a big step.
It is. Yeah. And fear of failure, I think, is something that trips people up a lot. And, failure is the way I learned everything that I know for the most part. Like the most important stuff that I've learned came from failing a lot. And so now I kind of see failure as like an opportunity, not something that like is defining of yourself, but it's more like, okay, I fucked up. Well, as long as people haven't died, hopefully I can learn something. Well, and if they did, then that's probably even more of a reason to learn something from it. Fortunately, my life experience hasn't resulted in death, not mass death, at least. Oh, but it's something that cripples people. Like a lot
I'd like
of
to
people
present
are...
Exhibit A, episode 15 of season 3 of Kitchen Sink Microscopy. Eric alludes to being responsible for the death of...
Well, it's hypothetical, let's say. But the fear of failure does cripple people. Because it's this whole building your identity around all your successes, and then if you fail, that you must somehow be a failure. And I would strongly suggest that is not the way people should see things. Like, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually what makes somebody a good leader, is being able to fail and be like, well, that didn't work out. Let's move on. And knowing enough to know what to do next and how to recover, how to deal with, in fact, dealing with failure. Like, being able to handle a failure is kind of the greatest indication of being like a good leader. Mm-hmm. If you only succeed, well, you've never been tried. Like, you've never been tested. If you've like myself done nothing but fail, then I think you'll learn a lot from that. And it's how you fail, how you succeed, that really determines that.
There's even an element of becoming an alpha in your failure by making light of it and bringing humor to the situation. And, like people always get down on self-deprecation, but it is empowering.
Oh yeah.
To be able to roast yourself is not like a pessimistic thing. It's more of a rise above it kind of thing. It's like, I'm not taking this seriously, I mean, I'll take it seriously, like this is something I need to improve, but I'm not going to take it seriously like, oh gee, I must be a fucking loser.
Well, take it seriously in the process you're doing, right? If lives are on the line, you take every precaution. But if there's a failure in other ways, like how you deal with that, how you present yourself, I think that kind of does make or break your status as a leader. Being able to fail gracefully and just be like, oh, all right, roll with the punches kind of stuff. And we're conditioned from an early age not to do that you should never fail, that if you make mistakes, then somehow that makes you a mistake, right? Like, everything rides on this one thing. It's like that's exactly what you should not care about.
Oh yeah.
In fact, not caring is the thing that might make you succeed better.
See, now we're going to dive into the education system, because I feel like this whole like grading sort of thing is the worst possible thing you can do, because here's the thing. Like, every now and then you'll come across a teacher that will let you retake a test, and maybe you get like a little bit less of a score than you would have or whatever, and that's just playing the game or whatever. But the actual win behind that is that you get a chance to see what you got wrong and go back and focus on it some more, and then prove to yourself more than anything you can get it right. Like, you had a little extra time, you knew what to focus on, you knew what weaknesses you had to focus more on, and you got it right the second time or the third time or the fourth time. Like,
Yeah.
I think the point should be getting it right, not getting it right the first time.
Well, and it's also how you achieve that goal, or that end game, I guess. Like, engineering is fraught with failure. People like hubris, people who thought they knew everything, and they built huge structures and they collapsed and killed like thousands of people. That's happened many, many times.
Or the side streets of Lakewood.
Yeah. Well, and so it's like, what you take away from that, like the failure is not something, it shouldn't be the end of it. And that's something with like school and tests. It's like, so, okay, the teacher has their own methods of teaching and they teach in their way. And then you take a test. And if you fail the test, then apparently you just suck. Well, what if the teacher just sucks at teaching? How do you know? Like, everybody learns in different ways too.
Well, it's not even about sucking at teaching. It's just that, like, they just respond to a different teaching style.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to say like sucking, but I mean, maybe not knowing how to teach a certain type of mind.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like we shouldn't have failure in school. It should just be,
well, not grading failure.
Yeah.
Failure should be seen as like an opportunity. Like, that is the point. If you don't learn, then if you fail a test or something, it's like, okay, well, clearly that is an indication that there's a different trajectory we need to employ, or something.
It's compounding.
Yeah.
Like, you fail a test and you don't get to do it over again. You now move into the next lesson not knowing the foundation of what you need to know.
Which, isn't that kind of failing at teaching?
Yeah. So like, all these people that get labeled as stupid, like, I would make the argument that nobody is stupid.
I would too.
They just take a little longer to learn certain things. Maybe.
Yeah, and if you think someone is stupid, go ahead and like, see the things they're good at, right? Like, if you want to feel dumb, find the stupidest person you know and have them show you how they do something they're good at, and you're gonna feel like an idiot, like a dumbass. And that's the thing. It's like, people learn different things. Learning does require an interest too. So, you have to be interested in that. And that's one of the things about being a teacher that's important, is teaching doesn't involve conveying information at all. At all. It involves inspiring a desire to learn something about a subject.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. All you have to do is get people interested in things, and they'll learn it themselves. You don't have to feed information into their skull. All you have to do is get them to get hyped about something, because people want to learn. That is a human trait. Like, that we're like information sponges. Like, we're just squeezed up waiting to soak up all the information about something. We just need a direction to soak, I guess.
So when I was at the University of Washington, the Seattle campus, I was in a developmental biology class with like 400 other people. There was like really no one-on-one sort of dynamic with the professor. You could make an appointment with office hours and stuff, and I did. And I said, I'm having some trouble with this. I'm going through a bit of a domestic situation, getting beaten and stuff like that, and I'm having a little trouble concentrating. And and she was like, I just don't think you're cut out for biology. You should just drop out. And I was like, well, wow. I'm not going to do that. And like I didn't get a super great grade out of that class, but you know what? I recognized what my weaknesses were. The large classes were not for me. The large campus was not for me. I switched to UW Bothell, and I went from like C's to A's. And I also got rid of my smartphone. Like all those things were like me being like, here's my weaknesses. I'm going to get rid of them or find a way around them. But the moral of the story is that someone told me I should just give up as an educator. They said that, right? And then later on in life, because I had pushed myself and gotten a degree, one of my oldest friends messaged me and said, I just wanted you to know, like, you inspired me to go back to school and get my degree. And even if I do nothing to better the world and they do, if I had taken that professor's advice and just dropped out, they wouldn't have gone back to school.
Oh man, that is the most rewarding thing that you can ever hear, is that you made a positive impact on somebody's life, like made a difference, inspired somebody to do something.
And people need to take the time to tell people that. Like when you feel inspired by somebody, let them know.
Exactly.
Because it's powerful.
Unless it's too late. Sorry, Nikola Tesla, but you did inspire me. At a very young age. Tesla,
unless he's a time traveler and he's watching the show, right?
I wouldn't completely discount that idea.
Unless you're Nikola Tesla.
Oh, I could be the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. And I might be a time traveler too, or an alien.
There is a little bit of a resemblance.
Do I need a Tesla coil behind me? Man, this is a super good conversation, and we haven't even gotten to the, like, you had brought up very early on, do we need leaders?
We should go into that, but
yeah, I mean, we're about an hour in, but let's briefly go into that.
Let's take a quick commercial break because I really got to pee.
Okay. All right. Intermission time.
We've got some commercials in the bank.
Oh yeah. Pseudo cheese. That's right. Pseudo cheese. Available in stores now. Rated as the best cheese Cheeseco produces. Slices easily. Tastes great. Melts deliciously. Limitless uses. %, all natural and GMO free. Head to your local grocer today and ask for genuine Cheeseco pseudo cheese. And remember, it may not be real cheese, but it sure is orange. And we're back.
Yeah. So, do we need leaders? I think yes. We don't always get the leaders we deserve, but
okay, yeah, you are very correct there. Hold on a second. Let me crack another beer and spill beer on my keyboard. I agree.
Yeah, I think that, like I said early on in the show, if you've got multiple people striving for a singular goal, you can't really come at it from like 4 or 5, 6 different ways. You have to agree on something, or if you can't agree, you have to have somebody say, this is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah, like a mediator or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's fair. Now I don't do we need leaders in our day-to-day lives? Probably not.
And we don't.
When there's something critical, though, you do need somebody that knows what to do, or somebody that's decisive to make decisions that might be difficult, I guess. Well, maybe. I mean, it depends. It depends on the decisions they are inclined to make, because there could be somebody that makes very bad decisions, but they're the person who's elected to be in charge of said decisions. So that could be a problem. Yeah, I mean, natural disasters or whatever, you certainly need people who can step up and tackle those kinds of things.
Yeah, like good and bad leaders is a whole other discussion, but as far as like needing a person to direct more than one other person, pretty much is pretty crucial. Like when it's just 2 people, right? Like when you and I ran the business, we would waste a lot of time arguing before we would actually like make some headway on a situation. But in the end, the fact that we took that extra time to try to get on the same page, whatever page that was, it was worthwhile. But the more people you add into that, the more like inefficient that sort of thing becomes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we're dealing with the business, I agree that time taken to kind of analyze things and chew the data, I guess, is definitely valuable. Well, because a lot of it, we this is kind of a new thing. We were in uncharted waters at that point. So it made sense to kind of talk things out. Of course, some of the stuff we were talking about, neither of us knew what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So,
and we also spent a significant amount of time making really extravagant paper airplanes. But
and I think a lot of those are still up in the ceiling there. Oh man, the F-16 paper airplane. But the thing is, I don't know that we necessarily need a day-to-day leader, like somebody in charge of things. The thing that like grinds my gears or drives me up the wall is like the president, right? Like, okay, so you have
how much of your day-to-day life is really like up to the president?
Well, mine, none. But for some people it's a big deal. And love it or hate it, it does impact things in a certain way. They're kind of like the final say on bills and things like that. But should they be? And what qualifies one to be in that position? And do we ever test for that? That would be my question. Like,
I mean, again, how perfect the system is almost like an entirely different issue. Like, yes, like all presidents are pretty shitty, but would we be better off without them? I don't necessarily think so. Like there are better systems to be had, yes, but there are plenty more worse ways of doing things than there are better ways.
Sure. And so. I would prefer to see things as kind of an experiment. We don't know.
Yeah.
the right way. I mean, if we
Yeah.
knew the right way, we'd be doing it now, right? So,
Well, yeah, I'm of the opinion that everyone kind of thinks shit's broke, but why is everyone always like, well, that way could never work if we haven't tried it?
well, and
You know?
and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, I think 100% of people can agree that things don't work correctly, but no one's willing to test alternatives.
Right.
Like, okay, so if this doesn't work, why don't we discard it and try something different? Or science, right? You test a few small samples and see how it works and stuff, like, but no one's willing to do that. I'm willing to, but I'm in a minority, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if our elected alphas, let's call them, for the sake of this episode, if our elected alphas actually scrutinized everything and said, here are the things that legitimately, like, directly affect everybody that somebody really needs to make a call on super quick, then I'll handle that stuff. But for the things that do affect everybody but don't necessarily need to follow the same system, laissez-faire.
Yeah,
like currency, like, yeah, play with Bitcoin, play with something different entirely, like,
sure,
play with things, like, see what works.
We should be experimenting, and yeah, like, why do we put everything in one bucket as a society? Just because somebody can make executive decisions, why do they need to make all decisions?
Yeah.
Why are they even in the news? Like, I don't care what Biden or Trump or GW is doing or whatever. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. Like, they're all a bunch of fucking idiots.
I mean, like, even down to the COVID stuff, right? People were so against masks. Almost the majority. And that's because a majority of our people live out in the sticks, like where there's already social distancing in place, where the virus may never come across their town of 25 people, like, and so, like, yeah, mandating the exact same thing for every citizen in the country is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no way.
The science is sound, but like, it doesn't apply evenly.
It's not everywhere. A one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's conditional based on the circumstances. It's definitely different. A 25 population town versus 25 million in a city.
Yeah. And the problem is different. People fall to one side of the fence or the other. They think, oh, if you're not wearing a mask, you're a dick. Or like, they're thinking, oh, if you're wearing a mask, you're a sheep. Like, well, no, it's just like, it depends on your situation.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to critically think about that. Like, if you're from a town of 25 and you need to go do business in a metropolis, you better put your mask on, like,
yeah. Well, and critical thinking, though, is a a dying art, I think.
Which is sad, because it's like, it's part of evolution, right? Like, if you don't have the ability to critically think, you're not going to survive in the wild.
Well, and if you're not a critical thinker and you just assume things, then, like, you can make mistakes as well. Like, you could be wrong. And if you're not self-analyzing, then maybe you're wrong about things.
You can critically think all you want and still be wrong. The
well,
cards are stacked against you.
True. That's true. Oh, man. Oh,
but yeah, so like, what's your overall take on leaders, though? Like, I mean, beyond like just day-to-day stuff, do you think there is like a need?
If it's something you don't know about, I'm a wisdom of the crowds kind of person, like where and you get enough people together and within that scope, you get the right answer. But you can't always have those kind of ideal lab conditions. There are definitely situations where you have to have people who make decisions. You have to have decision makers. Now, they should be people who know something about the decisions they're making. You know, imagine if you have somebody who's deciding medical stuff and they have not, they don't know anything about medicine, biology, or chemistry or whatever. They know nothing, but they're the person who's making the decisions.
Okay, so yes, I do agree with that. But let's say you're in the your plane crashed in the forest and there's 4 survivors. You're one of them. And of the 4 of you, none of you have medical training, but you all require medical assistance of some degree, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of you has seen every episode of Dr. House. And
well, okay. Now, if you've seen that, that's actually a negative.
And then another one had a sexual fetish of playing doctor. And then yeah, like basically the point I'm getting at is nobody has any real medical experience, but who do you defer to? Like,
well, I would defer to the person who knows the most about whatever they're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the problem is, of course, determining who is that person. You know, if they're the sheepish person hiding in the corner, doesn't really want to talk to people, you're going to be like, that person might not know something, but they could be like an epic surgeon. And you'd never know. But the person that's all boisterous and bombastic, they're just like, oh, hey, you know, jumping out there and stuff. That's the person that people are going to go to. And
yeah, that is kind of the drawback to the alpha mentality
and the democratic process too.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't always yield the best results.
Like the people with the most show aren't necessarily the ones with, you know, the
experience.
The most grow.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and I mean, I personally, I'm kind of inclined to kind of defer to science, like try to be as logical and scientific as possible and ignore all of the societal things telling me, oh, you should be this way or that way or whatever. But I'm a minority. There are not many people that do that. It's kind of rare, sadly. And good ideas. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the whole germ theory debacle that happened back in the 1800s, I think. Like, you could be right. You could know everything, but society doesn't believe you. And so you're cast by the wayside in favor of bullshit things like the miasma theory. And so you got people like, you know, putting flowers in their plague doctor masks and stuff, thinking that they're keeping themselves safe from diseases, the Black Plague and whatnot. Like, oh man, how far we've come, but we haven't come that far.
No, we haven't.
Like, the thing is, like, this is something that's really, really important for people to realize. It's really easy to look down on people in the past as dumb, right? Like, all those idiots, they didn't know anything. Well, it's like, what do you know? You only know something because you have access to Google. You know, you watch YouTube videos and stuff, and they tell you stuff. There are as many things that we don't know today as there were back then. And how do we know? How do we know if we know something? Well,
the problem is we're pattern seeking animals, and
yes,
we see the pattern of confidence and equate it with actual knowledge, which in certain cases is absolutely true. And
true.
in other cases, it's a total facade.
Well, that's exactly how you get flat earthers.
But which side do you most safely err upon? Right. I mean, that's what it comes to. Like, we can be super critical of people and call them idiots for like following the most confident person, but the alternative is to perhaps just do nothing and die anyway. So if you take the gamble on them and perhaps they're right, even if they're accidentally right, that's probably the better chance, right?
Well, if they're still alive, I guess that's a pretty good testament to whatever belief they have.
Yeah, so we can't be too hard on people for following the pack.
And sure, and things evolve over time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like testing an idea, but there's a difference between testing an idea scientifically and then reacting, like replaying an idea over and over and over again, even though it either hasn't been tested or has essentially, through testing and experience, been proven to be ineffectual. Like trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, even though every other time we've tried it, it hasn't worked. God, I need another beer.
Homeopathy.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, stuff like that, people again find patterns, correlation, causation, fallacy. They look for anything they can find to validate what they want to believe, and use that as their anecdotal evidence, even though it's not evidence at all.
Yeah, and that served us really well back in the day. It's certainly a survival instinct, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's probably a good place to start, but it should be a starting place and not the end goal. And that's kind of the thing, is that sort of structure has essentially become the end goal in society, I guess.
Just surviving?
No, the way of analyzing things that led us to survival, like millennia ago. The same processes, we still employ them, and they could serve us well in some cases, but they can also be very detrimental. And being able to like break out of that, like recognize when you're being played by your own genetics, and be like, oh, wait a minute, I should probably second guess this. That puts you at a different level. Well, it's one of the things that makes you an alpha, I guess.
Yeah.
Being a game changer, I guess.
Being smarter than your genes, man.
Yeah. Oh man.
Cobra man.
Do we need to be smoking pot now? Oh.
It is interesting how we get pretty metaphysical about pretty much any topic.
Yeah, and I think this one definitely has a lot of undercurrents going on. It's a complex topic. I don't think it's black and white, like in any way.
Yeah. I mean, moral of the story, to follow the leader, you've got to be a leader of your own and make that call. Do I follow the leader or do I forge my own path?
Oh, that is a really good point. Huh.
Yeah.
Like, in order to identify somebody that you want to follow, you have to not be a follower at all. Like, you have to be your own leader.
Yeah. Huh. Which involves identifying your own weaknesses. So,
yeah. And coming to terms with your own self, like looking in the mirror and stuff. Which I think we're kind of dissuaded in society from doing. Like looking at yourself really critically and being like, who am I? What's my goal?
Yeah.
And being okay with making mistakes, and taking chances. I don't think there's enough risk takers out there.
Huh.
It's like, yeah, you could die, but we know a lot more now. Like, you could spend half an hour on YouTube and not die. There's enough people who have died before us that can give us information to prevent us from dying.
Well, that's why they shouldn't censor people like dying on camera.
Well,
right.
I agree. Yeah, no, because that is a powerful thing. When you actually see that, it really brings home like the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
Like, wow, when you actually watch someone die.
Remember Faces of Death?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Was that even like actually real though?
I think some of it was, but I think they started padding it just to make more videos. But there was some stuff that was definitely like, oh yeah, that person just died on camera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do that, and that's the lesson, right?
Yeah.
Well, but instead you got people that are like, oh, it's gory, we can't let people see it.
Well, it's like Darwin awards and stuff, like doing something dumb results in a death. You should probably see that so you can understand how heavy that is.
Yeah.
Like if it's candy coated and concealed from view, well, I mean, somebody died. Like how impactful is that going to be on the next person that tries the Tide Pods or whatever, then the next YouTube challenge? We should probably see that.
Yeah. I miss the days of the internet where you could actually find video of R. Bud Dwyer committing suicide on live TV.
Was that the guy that shot himself in the mouth with a revolver
at a press conference? He was a politician. Yeah,
I think you showed me that.
Yeah,
and I think it was equally the same as when I was watching Two Girls, One Cup, where I was like eating a muffin and like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to see how reality differs from Hollywood in some aspects, because like, we're conditioned to think that it's like super gory when like it's actually not what you would expect or something.
Well, and also like if people are in that mindset, like seeing that kind of thing, like,
and the conditions that got him there,
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like
he had an affair or something. Like why should that drive somebody to suicide? Like,
yeah, what led up to that? Like, and you see that, and it's like, wow, that was so permanent. Why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
I honestly don't understand that. Like, I am a self-preservation kind of person all the way. Like, That'd be the last thing I would do. But it is fascinating to watch that. And, you know, it isn't Hollywood. You know, people, the Hollywood stuff, like think it's all grandiose or whatever. No, it's actually very intimate. It's a moment where somebody kills themselves and they're gone. Like that's the moment where they left this plane of existence. That's it. And it wasn't really there was no fanfare, no like credits rolling or anything like that. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
And why did they do that? And you know, I don't understand why it should be something that's concealed from people. It's like, this is a thing people do. You could do this yourself. You know, like,
yeah.
Why is it not something everybody could see? And maybe it's something everybody should see. Like, see what happened and listen, you know, read. Yeah. Sorry, it's like people peeling out outside my house. But, you know, read what this person wrote, because a lot of people leave something behind, like a manifesto or something like that. Read what they wrote and you know, pay heed to it. Because this could be you someday.
Yeah.
Who knows? And yeah.
Well, on that morose note, I suppose maybe we should wrap things up and invite people to hang out for the tune that might be kind of dark.
It could be. Yeah.
Could be.
Well, I mean, a few of ours are kind of go into that direction.
Yeah. We have a pretty diverse kind of collection of music
catalog. Yeah. It is pretty diverse. There's some very happy stuff. And then there's a song Happy that's not really happy. Oh man. Yeah. Oh. I think we've gone like an hour and a half in, so it's probably a good point to end on for now.
Yeah.
I think this topic deserves like a lot more conversation. There's actually like, man, what? This is deep. I didn't think this was going to be that deep. Oh wait, that's what she said.
Alpha move.
Every day.
Well,
babes, bullets, bombs. Damn, I love this job.
Y'all have fun being alphas tonight. And, yeah. Go party.
Be your own alpha, you know. I think everybody is in their own right. In their own circle. Yeah, and if you're not, well, find a circle. Find your people, I guess.
The circle of life.
Oh man. Oh no, sad. Oh god. Oh, sad movie. I think it's probably time for some scooter riding to cool off, because I am like really overheated.
Well, I would join you if I didn't have a bunch of empty beer cans in front of me.
Yeah. Fortunately, my scooter can't go that fast, so my chances of dying are pretty slim.
Well, be careful anyway.
You know.
All right, everybody. Well, hopefully this doesn't say rest in peace, Eric, and have a good day.
It won't. It's okay. I'll be fine. I've made mistakes before, and that's why I won't make mistakes tonight.
I've made good decisions in the past. I've made good decisions in the future.
What is that? Humans and fish can get along or something? Oh man. Oh, just we could riff off the politicians' gaffes. Oh, the Dan Quayle stuff.
That was Dan Quayle, I think.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, he is like a gold mine of crazy ass sayings. And that's why I say politics is the entertainment branch of the country. It's entertainment. Like, as soon as you see it in that light, it changes everything. But yeah, I think it's probably a good point to end on.
Yep.
I think we've had a pretty good conversation, covered kind of a little bit of everything. But as usual, we came full circle.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So like and share and subscribe and buy the music and
definitely buy the music, buy the merch, or the Floyd shirt. Kitchen sink meowscopy. Come on. Floyd.
and don't drink and drive much.
Yeah, wherever possible. And if you do, don't drive fast. Because speed kills, apparently. Oh, well. All right.
That's speed or like velocity speed?
Yeah, I was thinking like, ooh, that's a good point. Don't they both kind of? Huh.
Yeah, but
that's a topic for the drugs versus guns episode. Oh man. Well, for everybody who's still here, sticking it out, like an hour and a half in, thanks. We salute you. And yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
Take a deep breath. Yeah. Eyes a bloodshot.